Welcome, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu, Melech HaOlam, Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'atok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And let's go into the share. There we are. So these are these statements that are being made as Noah gets off the ark, right? We read yesterday how he offered up an offering and discussed that a little bit, at any rate. Od kol yemei haaretz, as long as the earth endures, literally means as long as all the days of the earth, right? Zera, seed time, the katsir, and harvest time. In other words, it's the core and cold, vachom, and heat, the kayetz and summer, forgive me, the choref and winter time, the yom and day, and valayla and night. Notice, by the way, we are talking about opposites in a sense, right? And they're all coming together. Lo, and the next word is an interesting one, yishvotu. They will never rest, right? They will never cease. And the word Shabbat actually has to do with cessation. That's the essential inner meaning of the word Shabbat, is cessation. And in this case, of course, the regular Shabbat with a capital S is cessation of labor. But we're saying that these sorts of things are going to go on forever, and we're going to have a major Rashi on all of this, as we will see. So here we go. Od kol yemei haaretz, right? V'gomer lo yishpotu, they will never cease. So he says, Vav itim, there are sixth letter, 6 itim, time, seasons, periods, time periods, halalu, these 6 periods. Shnei chodashim, 2 months, lechol echad ve'echad, for each and every one of them. Kamo sheshaninu, as we have learned. And this is what we've learned. I'm trying to look and see what reference he has, and this is all from the same place. So let me go up here and see if I can find a reference to an actual Talmud passage. So this is his Bereshit Rabbah here. That's this here. But let's see, this does not sound like when it says Lamed Daf a page number, that is not a Masechet Shavuot. This is all in the tractate Shavuot. So this is what we must have learned there. So when it says Kuf Gimel or etc., these are referring to Masechet Shavuot, his reference to it. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, Kamo Sheshaninu, as we learned, and here we go. Chatzi Tishrei, from the middle of the month of Tishrei, the month that just ended, Umar Cheshvan, we're in this month of Cheshvan. So in other words, basically, we're looking at somewhere between, I'm going to say, because we're in October, so let's say half of September, October, right? V'chatzi Kislev, and half the month of Kislev. Zera is a seed time. Interesting, right? So it's early seed time, early sowing time. Chatzi Kislev, half of Kislev. So we're looking at, I think, mid-November, V'tevet, and December, V'chatzi Shavat, and we're looking at the middle of January, unless I need to push everything a month later. So half of September, October, and half of November. And then we're talking about half of November, December, and mid-January. I think that sounds better, is a cold time, because January is generally the coldest time of the year. So we need to be in there, etc. But, sorry, here's the place. Here's his Talmud place, but Baba Metzia. So he said it's not Shavuot, it is in Baba Metzia. And even though I prepared this, my short-term memory is clearly demonstrating itself very nicely. In Baba Metzia, the middle gate, that's what that means, one of the tractates in the Talmud, page 103. And this is Sfarim Acherim. There are other versions of Rashi, right, that have this included. Od kol yomei, as long as the days, klomar, and that means tamid. It simply means always. Kamo od tumato bo, which means, literally it means his impurity is still within him. But the idea is as long as he is tameh, right? Kor. So he says cold. Kasher michoref. This is even colder than choref. Choref is the word that we use for winter time. So we know that as you move into November, etc., it gets colder. But as we move into late December, January, February, early February, that is even colder. Choref, right? So he says choref. This I guess September. Let's see. Look at this: September, October, half of September, October, and mid-November. 8 zera sa'orim. It is the time of sowing barley, the kitniot and legumes. Hacharifim lihitpashel, which ripen speedily. Lihitpashel maher. They are very. They are in a rush to ripen. Kor Uchatzi Shavat. So the time of Kor is the middle of Shavat. So that's actually, I'm trying to think, it must be mid-January. For Adar and Adar, although Adar is usually, March. V'chatzi Nisan and half of Nisan, which is the beginning of springtime. So we have to think that Nisan is generally April. So middle February, it's interesting that he considers these the coldest times. I'm not sure, having to obviously struggle with this as well, right? But that would make sense because Adar usually is March. So Shavat, the previous was February, March, and half of April. Maharshal. So this is one of the great commentators on the Talmud, on the Babylonian Talmud. So he says, Katsir Chatzi Nisan. He says that there's a harvest time in the middle of Nisan, which is the barley harvest. So Nisan, middle of April, May, Chatzi Sivan, and half of June. Kayitz, right? This is summertime. Uzman likitat ta'enim. This is the time for collecting. A ta'ena is figs. Vizman shemiyavshin otam, and the time when they dry them. Basadot, in the fields. Ushmo kayitz, and the reason it's called kayitz, these figs, etc., are called summer fruit. And lahakitz, interesting, means to wake up. So whether I was thinking about this as I was preparing this, and he says, Kamo, and we have an example in the book of Samuel, the second book of Samuel, chapter 16, V'halechem v'hakayitz le'echol hanarim, and let the young people, young men, eat the bed. They have bread and the summer fruit for the young men to eat. V'chom, heat, husof yamot hachama. These are literally, it means the end of the summer solstice, I believe. Chatzi av. So we're talking here about mid-July, I believe, of the Elul. July, mid-July, August, v'chatzi Tishrei, and mid-September. Sha'olam cham biyoter. This is when it's the hottest time of the year, late summer. Kamoshe shaninu b'masechet Yoma, as we have learned in the tractate Yoma. Yoma is literally Aramaic for the day, and the day, capital D, is Yom Kippur. She le shal he kaita. That's the Aramaic expression There's this expression in Masechet Yoma, which says Shal Kaita Kashe Mikaita, which means the end of summer, Kaita. So the Tet in Aramaic corresponds to the Tzadik in Hebrew, right? The end of summer is harder, tougher than summer itself. So he's helped us understand these periods. V'yom v'layla lo yishbotu, and day and night will not, or neither day and night will cease. Michlal. So this implies sheshabtu. Since he's saying they won't cease, it implies that they did cease. Kol yamot hamabul, all the days of the flood. Shelo shimshu hamazalot, because at that time the zodiac was not in operation. So exactly shimshu is an interesting word here, because the question is, what is the Jewish attitude towards horoscopes and things like that? And we are aware, as far as my own education is concerned, that all developed in Babylonia. That is, that the notion of the stars and the planets and their positions in the sky at specific times of the year were, and how they are supposed to influence human behavior, was something that was a profound belief of the Babylonians. And the reason why we have 60 minutes and 60 seconds, etc., is representative of the Babylonian sexagesimal system. And that for the Babylonians, the idea of astrology was more important than astronomy, but they developed a fairly sophisticated astronomical theory in order to help them understand the astrology. So the question that I'm getting to is, to what extent does traditional Judaism accept the idea of astrology of that? And I would say that the fact that it says Shimshu Hamazalot, that the word Lishamesh, to serve, is implying that in some ways. But the difference is this, that we believe that God is the one who puts those astrological signs and the planets, etc., into place, so that ultimately God is responsible for our fate, and it isn't simply the position of the planets, whereas astrology itself tends to imply, right, that we are completely influenced or very much influenced simply by those things. So the answer is yes, we are influenced by it, but nevertheless, they themselves are influenced by the divine power. So just going on with the thought here, Velo nikar bein yom uvein laila, and it was hard, it says, and it was hard to recognize between day and night. And that is in Bereshit Rabbah, chapter 25, and possibly he's saying chapter 34. Okay. Lo yishbotu, they will never cease. Lo yifsaku, they will never come to an end. Lafsik means to end. Okay. Ella, these will never come to an end. Mi lehitnaheg kisidran, from operating in their normal order. That the normal order of the natural, of the movement of the planets and the earth, etc., will not come to an end. And that's interesting, perhaps something worthy of literary consideration as to, is there a deeper meaning to this, to its significance? Going on. So, chapter 9. Vayivarech Elohim et Noach ve'et banav. God blessed Noah and his sons. Vayomer lahem, and he said to them, Pru uvu, be fruitful and multiply, umil'u et haaretz, and fill the earth. Now, Rashi is not going to mention this, but when I was in rabbinical school, I was led to believe that this passage, because God was only addressing Noah and his sons as to being fruitful and multiplying, and not addressing this to the women, that male contraception is forbidden, whereas female contraception is permissible, based on this passage here. So just thought you might find that interesting. More ra'achem, and the fear of you, v'chitchem, and the terror of you, yeh al kol chayat haaretz, will be on all the beasts of the earth, of the animals of the earth, v'al kol of hashamayim, and over all the birds of the sky, v'chol asher tirmos ha'adama, in everything with which the earth, tirmos, creeps on the earth, everything that creeps on the earth, uvachol dagei hayam, and all the fish of the sea. So remes is a specific category of creeping creatures, and we would include lizards and snakes and things like that. Let's see. Biyedchem, let me make sure I've got this. Yes. Biyedchem natati, I have placed them. Biyedchem nitanu, they are placed in your hands. They are under your complete dominion. They're under your complete control. And we will see in a moment the implication of that. V'chitchem, right? The terror of you. V'ematchem, and what it means, it's like, and the fear of you. Kamo tiru chatat, I think is what it's saying, or chitat. You will experience terror. Quotation from Job chapter 6. The Agada, he says, and there is a legend, Lashon Chayut. Okay, he says that it has when it says chitchem, that it's as if it's saying v'chayatchem, so that it has to do with your being animated, something like that, I believe. So this is from Sanhedrin, Tractate Sanhedrin, the Talmud, page 98, and Shabbat, the Tractate Shabbat, page 151. And here we are. So in other words, v'chitchem means essentially as long as you're alive. Shekolzman shehatinok ben yomo chai, because it says as long as a babe, an infant of 1 day is alive, is actually alive. Ein ata tzarich l'shomro min ha'achbarim. You have no need to guard this infant from mice attacking the body of the infant. Og, remember King Og, Melech Bashan, king of Bashan, who was like a giant and a very powerful individual, mate, if he's deceased, tzarich l'shomro min ha'achbarim, you're going to have to guard his body from the mice. Shene'emar u'mo'arachem v'chitchem. Yeah, because it says in the verse, and the fear of you, v'chitchem, and instead of translating this as terror, we're understanding that it means as long as you're alive. Yeah, it will be. Emata yeh, when will it be? So here, it's because it's got this word, yeah, will be. Okay, so when emata yeh, when will it be? Morachem, the fear of you, al hachayot, over the animals, kolzman shatem chayim, as long as you are alive. So interesting, deconstruction of this verse and what it really means. Going on. Kol remes, ashur, here we go. All that swarms, with all that is alive and swarm, living creatures that swarm, lachem yelochla, it shall be to you for food, keyerik esev, just like the herbs, the grass and herb the plants, natati lachem, I have given them to you, et kol, everything. So it is this verse, chapter 9, verse 3 of Genesis, is the verse where human beings become carnivores. And it's seen, again, this is understood, I think, very much from a literary perspective, that because Noah had saved the animals from certain destruction, he's also given this kind of power over them that human beings had to deserve. And that's what I think is the novel and interesting point, that we shouldn't just see being carnivores as a right or as an entitlement, but rather something that we have to earn. And so here is the origin of the idea of human beings having earned that right to do it. And it's very much like maritime law in some ways, and the laws of salvage. Lachem yeh lochla, they shall be to you for consumption, right, for eating. And in the tractate Sanhedrin, page 109, Shelo hirsheti la'adam harishon, because I did not give permission to Adam, right, the first man, basar, flesh, meat. I did not give him permission to eat meat, ella yerek esev, right, except for vegetation. Ulachem keyerek esev, and to you this will be like that vegetation, shehivkarti la'adam harishon, which I allowed, right, released, as it were, to, or made available for that first man, for Adam. Natati lachem et kol, I have given you everything. And I'm going to stop here. There's an ach that follows, because we're gonna have a however. So I will do the verse. Ach basar benafsho, but living flesh, in other words, or should I say, meat that is still that is in a living creature. Damo lo tochelu, you shall not consume its blood. Right, so I think we can do one more verse. Basar benafsho damo. Right, so meat that's alive, right, that's in a living creature, its blood. So isar lahem ever minachai. So there is this law of that's called aver, a limb min hachai, from a living creature. And I suspect there were people, because there was no refrigeration and they knew how quickly meat spoiled, is that they would amputate an animal and consume that particular limb. In other words, they would amputate a non-essential limb so that the animal would stay alive. But this is a level, of course, of cruelty. So when God says, I've given you everything, it doesn't mean under every single circumstance. And I could almost like to say that this is perhaps an example of oral law, that there's a way that they need to modify this. Yes, Judith.
Well, this has always struck me as it excludes the Maasai people who they bleed and drink the blood of their cows,
right,
which is major flocks.
Right.
They have major flocks, but that's what they do.
Right. I understand. Let me just finish this sentence, right? Klomar, that is to say, kolzman shenafsho bo, that is to say, as long as its soul is within it. In other words, as long as it's alive, lo tuchlu habasar, you shall not consume the meat. And so, benafsho damo, this phrase, Rashi's explaining this to us, right? That it's a figure of speech, so to speak, or right, or an idiom, excuse me, that it's an idiom, but od nafshobo, that what it means is as long as its soul is within it, meaning as long as it's alive. Basar benafsho lo tochelu, a meat in the living creature, you shall not eat. Hare aver minachai, he says, there we go. This is, in fact, the limb from a living creature. Af benafsho damo lo tochelu, right? So he says, even as long as it's alive, you shall not consume its blood. So this is the Masai part right here. Hare dam minachai. So in other words, blood from the living creature, you're not allowed to eat either. Yeah, I know. We have cultural issues going on here. So, but Jews are forbidden. Well, not just Jews. This would be a Noahide law, which would apply to all people. So, a question whether the Messiah could survive by giving that up. But that's, another story altogether. I'm going to mark it here and stop the share. And we will stop the recording.